So we need a user. And as I mentioned, for now we have no authentication process. So for the moment, I will create a user manually. First of all, I will remove this forced true call because I don't always want to override my tables. Otherwise, all our products and so on will always be gone. So I'll go back to sync now that the relations are set up. And once all the tables were created, so in this then call here, I actually now also want to create my user. And therefore, here, I will use my user model and first of all, check if I find a user with the ID 1. And this is, of course, just some dummy code to see if I do have one user, because I only need one for now, as we have no authentication. And if I do have it, I'll not create a new one. If I don't have it, I will. So here I have user find by ID 1, and I will return this. Therefore, also take app listen out of this then block, and add a new then block where I will get my retrieved user. Here, I'll then check if I don't have a user, so if this is null, because if I don't have a user, I want to create a new one by calling user create. There, I'll pass in a JavaScript object where I set the name to Max and the email to some dummy email. You can enter any values you want here, just make sure you populate all the fields you defined in your user model. This also returns a promise, so I'll return this true, but also we might never execute this because we already got a user. So for this case, I'll return user, but now we're inconsistent because now this anonymous function either returns a promise or just an object. We should always return the same so that we can chain then here successfully. And therefore, I will actually call promise resolve here, which is essentially a promise that will immediately resolve to user. Technically, you can omit this though, because if you return a value in a then block, it is automatically wrapped into a new promise. Just wanted to highlight that you should make sure that the values are equal, but here it's managed for us. And therefore, here I now definitely know that I got a user. We can console log the user here. And I also start listening to my server here. So here is my user creation result that I get back. And if I go back to my Workbench database and I refresh the users table, we see the user here too. And if I do restart my server with npm start, that still works. And it doesn't create a new user here because we already have one. So this code is working as it should. I'll comment out this. And with this change made, we now always have a user available. As a next step, I will register a new middleware because I want to store that user in my request so that I can use it from anywhere in my app conveniently. So maybe here I'll add a new middleware. I'll simply add a function with request, response, and next, as you learned it before in this course. And in here, I want to reach out to my database and retrieve my user with user find by ID 1. Now, you might be wondering if this can ever return a user if we only create it down there. Now, keep in mind, app use here only registers a middleware. So for an incoming request, we will then execute this function. npm start runs this code for the first time, and npm start is what runs Sequelize here, not incoming requests. Incoming requests are only funneled through our middleware. So npm start runs this code which sets up our database, but never this anonymous function. It just registers it as middleware for incoming requests. So this code will only run for incoming requests, which on the other hand can only reach this if we did successfully start our server here with app listen. And that in turn is only true if we are done with our initialization code here. So we are guaranteed to find a user here. So we can find a user by ID here. And what do I want to do with my user in the then block then? Well, I want to store it in a request. So here, I will set request user equal to user. And we can do that. We can simply add a new field to our request object. we should just make sure we don't overwrite an existing one, like body. But user is undefined by default. Now I'm storing the user I retrieved from the database in there. Also keep in mind, the user we're retrieving from the database here is not just a JavaScript object with the values stored in the database. It's a SQLize object with the values stored in the database and with all these utility methods SQLize added, like destroy. So we're storing this SQLize object here in the request and not just a JavaScript object with the field values. Instead, we got the extended version here, and therefore, whenever we call request user in the future in our app, we can also execute methods like destroy. So with that, all I need to do is I need to call next here, of course, so that we can continue with the next step if we got our user and stored it. Now with that, we got the user set up and retrieved. Let's now make sure that we can also use it to create new products that are associated to that user.